The plane touched down at dawn. Through the window, Texas looked endless, flat fields melting into a pink horizon, the kind of sunrise that felt like forgiveness. Marcus Ellison pressed his forehead to the glass and whispered to himself, home. 11 months overseas had a way of changing how a man saw the world. Out there, every sunrise meant survival. Every letter from home felt like a lifeline. But this morning, this was supposed to be the sunrise that gave everything back. Marcus had grown up on that land, a stretch of ranch that his mother called God's quiet acres. When she passed, the ranch became his anchor, a promise to keep the soil breathing, the pecan trees standing, and the porch swing creaking with laughter again someday. He'd kept every bill paid before deployment. The HOA had his forwarding address, his power of attorney. Everything was neat, squared away, the way soldiers leave things when they know they might not come back. The drive from the base to Cedar Creek was 2 hours of pure anticipation. The old truck hummed under his hands, the air smelled like mesquite and dust, and every mile felt like a heartbeat closer to peace. He could already picture it, the weathered mailbox that still bore his mother's handwriting, the oak tree he used to climb, the porch light she'd always leave on, just in case. But when Marcus turned onto the gravel road leading home, his hands froze on the wheel. A silver minivan sat in the driveway. Children's bikes leaned against the fence. The porch swing was still there, but it wasn't creaking for him. At first, he thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe directions got crossed. Maybe relatives visiting. But the curtains were different. The flower pots on the steps, brand new. A woman appeared at the door, a toddler on her hip. She looked startled at first, then wary. "Can I help you?" she asked. Marcus straightened, still in uniform, duffel bag slung across his shoulder. "This is my home," he said quietly. "Who are you?" The woman hesitated. "We bought this place 6 months ago, from the HOA. The words hit harder than anything he'd faced overseas. He'd prepared for loss in battle, not at his doorstep. Marcus walked the perimeter of the fence slowly, his boots crunching against the gravel. Everything was both familiar and foreign, the same sky, the same land, but now fenced off by paperwork and signatures he never gave. He didn't raise his voice. Soldiers don't when they're trained to stay calm. But his chest ached with something colder than anger, betrayal. He drove to the nearest gas station and sat there for a long time. The smell of gasoline, the hum of trucks passing by, it all blurred together. When he finally pulled out his phone, he called an old friend, Deputy Sheriff Luis Navarro. They'd grown up together, worked the same hayfields as teens, dreamed of bigger things under the same Texas stars. "Luis, it's Marcus," he said, voice tight. "You back?" Luis replied, surprised. "Yeah," Marcus said. "But it looks like my home isn't mine anymore." By that evening, the shock had turned into something sharper. Marcus sat at his sister's kitchen table, papers spread out, receipts, letters, mortgage statements, all paid, all current. How could they do this? Emma asked, eyes wet with disbelief. Marcus shook his head. "They counted on me being gone. They thought a deployed soldier can't fight back." There was silence, then Emma reached across the table, gripping his hand. "Then they don't know you, brother. You came back from war. You'll come back from this too." That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He sat by the window of his sister's guest room, looking out at the dark Texas fields. Crickets sang in the distance. Somewhere, a dog barked once, twice, then fell silent. He thought of his mother's words, the ones she used to repeat when times got hard. "Land remembers, Marcus. Treat it right, and it'll stand for you when people don't." He closed his eyes and whispered back, "Then stand for me now, Ma." The wind stirred through the trees outside. Maybe it was just coincidence. But to Marcus, it felt like the land was listening. The next morning, Marcus drove into town to the HOA office, a small brick building squeezed between a dental clinic and a bakery. Inside, the air smelled like coffee that had been sitting too long. "I need to speak to Sylvia Brenner," he said to the receptionist. When Sylvia appeared, she looked every bit as polished as the rumors said, tailored suit, silver hair in a perfect twist, voice smooth but sharp. "Well, Mr. Ellison," she said, folding her arms. "I wondered when you'd return." "You sold my home," Marcus said evenly. Sylvia's smile didn't falter. "The HOA executed a foreclosure after repeated violations and unpaid dues." "I paid everything," Marcus said, his voice steady but rising. "And you know it." Sylvia's eyes narrowed slightly. "Then prove it." "In court." As Marcus walked out of the office, the Texas sun hit him hard. But the burn in his chest was stronger. He didn't yet know how deep this ran, how many families had been stripped of their homes the same way. But he knew one thing with soldier certainty: he had fought for justice in foreign lands. Now he would fight for it at home. Marcus Ellison had faced ambushes overseas, but nothing like the ambush waiting for him back home. In war, the enemy wore uniforms. Here, they wore name badges and polite smiles. He sat across from Deputy Sheriff Luis Navarro at the Parker County office. The two men hadn't seen each other in years, but in that moment, their friendship snapped back into place like it had never left. Luis spread out a few documents on the desk: property transfers, foreclosure notices, signatures that didn't look quite right. "Marcus, I checked the county records," Luis said, voice low. "The HOA filed a lien on your property while you were deployed. Said you owed $7,000 in unpaid dues." Marcus frowned. "That's impossible." Luis nodded. "I know. But they didn't stop there. The foreclosure happened just weeks later. It was fast, too fast. Feels like someone wanted it that way." Marcus leaned back, exhaling. "They took my mother's land on paper while I was serving this country." Luis looked at him, eyes steady. "Then let's take it back, with the law." And that's how it began. That same afternoon, Marcus contacted the Judge Advocate General's office, the military's legal arm. They confirmed what Luis suspected: the Service Members' Civil Relief Act protected him against exactly this kind of foreclosure. The moment Marcus provided proof of active deployment, the law was on his side. But Sylvia Brenner had made a mistake too big to hide. Over the next week, Marcus worked side by side with Captain Avery Cho, a military lawyer who believed justice wasn't paperwork, it was protection. Together they combed through every document, every letter, every fee that Sylvia's HOA had ever issued. Patterns began to emerge: late fees added after payments, signatures mismatched, violations invented from thin air. But it wasn't just Marcus. Other names appeared. Elderly couples. Deployed soldiers. Families who never stood a chance. Captain Cho tapped one report, eyes narrowing. "This isn't random," she said. "They're targeting people who can't fight back." One by one, victims began to surface. Franklin Ortega, a mechanic who lost his house after mysterious fines tripled overnight. The Holbrooks, retired teachers who had to leave the home they'd built over 40 years. Patrice Nolan, a nurse who came home from a night shift to find an eviction notice taped to her door. Each story carried the same pattern, the same signatures, the same fear. Marcus met them at the local diner: coffee, pie, and quiet rage. "They thought we wouldn't talk," Patrice said, hands trembling. "Well," Marcus replied softly, "they thought wrong." Word began to spread. The story of the soldier whose home was stolen while he was deployed made local headlines, then state news, then national attention. But Marcus didn't want fame, he wanted fairness. When reporters asked for a comment, he said, "This isn't just about me. It's about what kind of country we are. Do we protect those who serve, or do we sell their homes while they're gone?" Those words struck a chord far beyond Texas. As attention grew, so did resistance. Sylvia Brenner wasn't used to being challenged. She gathered her HOA board late one night, her voice sharp as the edge of a blade. "They're trying to make us criminals," she snapped. "We followed procedure. We documented everything." But one board member, Curtis Doyle, couldn't meet her eyes. He'd handled the HOA's finances. And now, he was watching the lies close in. That same week, Curtis called Luis Navarro anonymously. "I've got proof," he said, voice trembling. "Emails. Instructions. She told us to prioritize homeowners who were low legal risk. I can't live with it anymore." The evidence hit like thunder. Curtis handed over a flash drive, internal memos, spreadsheets, and emails signed by Sylvia herself. It was all there: inflated fees, falsified records, and a deliberate campaign to strip homes from people least able to fight back. Captain Cho's legal team moved fast. They filed motions for discovery, injunctions to freeze HOA foreclosures statewide, and a federal complaint that drew in the Department of Justice. For the first time in a long time, the system tilted toward the people. But while Marcus built a case with facts, Sylvia launched one built on fear. Anonymous posts appeared online claiming Marcus was unstable, struggling with PTSD, dangerous. Luis warned him, "She's trying to bait you. Don't give her a headline she can use." Marcus nodded. But he couldn't deny the sting. For a soldier, your name is everything, and she was trying to stain it. Instead of striking back, he turned to service. He began volunteering at a local veterans center, helping other soldiers understand their rights under the SCRA. "They used the law against me," he said, "but we can use it to protect each other." One quiet evening, Marcus returned to his ranch, not to confront, but to remember. He parked on the road, looking out at the porch light glowing in the distance. The family living there now had no idea how deep the roots beneath their feet ran. He didn't hate them. They were victims too, misled by a system that treated property like prey. As he sat there, the wind picked up, rustling through the pecan trees. He whispered to the land again, "I'm not done fighting yet." By spring, the case had grown beyond a single ranch. The Department of Justice sent investigators. The governor's office called for an audit of every HOA in the state. And what started as one man's loss was now a movement. At the courthouse, Marcus met Franklin, Patrice, and the Holbrooks again. This time, they weren't just victims, they were witnesses, ready to stand. Captain Cho looked around the room, her voice calm but firm. "What you're doing isn't just reclaiming property," she said. "You're reclaiming dignity. You're saying the American dream isn't for sale." Marcus nodded. "Then let's make sure they hear us." And for the first time since he'd stepped off that plane, Marcus felt something he hadn't in months: hope. Not blind hope, but the kind born from truth, from unity, from the quiet belief that justice, though slow, still moves. The fight wasn't over. But the truth had begun to speak. The courthouse was full long before the hearing began. Families packed into wooden benches, reporters filled the aisles, and a quiet tension hung in the air, like the moment before a storm breaks. Marcus Ellison sat at the front, his uniform pressed, hands folded, eyes fixed on the flag behind the judge's bench. This wasn't just about him anymore. It hadn't been for a long time. He could feel the weight of every story that had joined his: Franklin's grease-stained hands, Patrice's trembling voice, the Holbrooks' tired smiles. Each of them had lost something precious. And now, together, they were here to take it back. Across the aisle sat Sylvia Brenner. She was still composed, still polished, but the confidence that once radiated from her had faded. Her kingdom of control, built on fear and signatures, was crumbling in the light. Her attorneys shuffled papers and whispered strategy, but there was something hollow in their movements. They knew the tide had turned. Captain Avery Cho rose first. Her voice was steady, every word weighted with respect, for the law, and for the people who had been wronged by it. "Your Honor," she began, "this case is not about one home. It is about a system that forgot its humanity. It is about those who serve this country returning home to find their lives sold off piece by piece." The judge listened, unmoving. She continued, "We have evidence of falsified records, inflated fees, and deliberate manipulation of homeowners who were elderly, ill, or deployed overseas. The HOA did not enforce rules, they exploited vulnerability." Then came the evidence: emails, ledgers, memos signed by Sylvia herself. Each document a crack in her fortress. Each witness another stone falling. Franklin Ortega took the stand, voice low but steady. They said I owed more than I made in a month, he said. I tried to reason with them. They threatened to take my tools. And then they took my home. Patrice Nolan followed, her eyes wet but fierce. They told me to stop asking questions or they'd take me to court. I wish I had known then what I know now, that I wasn't the only one. Finally, Marcus took the stand. The courtroom fell completely silent. He looked at the judge, at the faces in the room, faces that mirrored his own exhaustion, his own stubborn faith. I served 11 months overseas, he began, patching up soldiers, holding brothers while they bled, believing that what we fought for was something solid, something worth coming home to. He paused. But when I came home, my land was gone. Not because I failed, but because someone saw my absence as opportunity. He lifted a folder of receipts, the same ones he'd carried since that first night. These are the proof of payment. The proof of effort. The proof that I did my part. I didn't break the rules. The rules broke me. The judge's gavel struck once, sharp and final. Enough, he said. I have heard what I need to hear. When the verdict came, it felt like the air itself held its breath. The court finds the actions of the Cedar Creek Homeowners Association, under the direction of Mrs. Sylvia Brenner, to be fraudulent, predatory, and illegal. All foreclosures are hereby nullified. Properties will be restored to their rightful owners. Furthermore, evidence will be referred to federal prosecutors for criminal charges. The room erupted, tears, applause, disbelief. For some, justice had taken too long. For others, it had finally come. Marcus didn't raise his arms or shout. He simply bowed his head, eyes closed, whispering, "Thank you." Beside him, Captain Cho placed a hand on his shoulder. "You did more than win a case, Sergeant," she said softly. "You reminded this country who we are." Outside the courthouse, cameras waited, microphones flashing like lightning. Marcus stepped up to the steps, the Texas sun washing over him. "I didn't come here to celebrate," he said. "I came here to make sure what happened to me doesn't happen to anyone else. We serve our country overseas, but sometimes the hardest battles are the ones we fight right here, at home." Weeks passed. Federal investigators built criminal cases. Sylvia Brenner and her board faced charges of fraud and conspiracy. The system that once felt untouchable was finally being held accountable. Meanwhile, Marcus returned to his ranch. He walked the land at sunrise, the soil damp with new rain, the air smelling of life again. The porch swing creaked softly in the breeze. He repaired the fences himself, plank by plank, humming the old hymns his mother used to sing. Every nail he drove was an act of reclamation, not just of property, but of peace. Soon, neighbors began to stop by, not out of curiosity, but out of solidarity. Veterans, teachers, retirees. They brought pie, coffee, and stories of their own struggles with HOAs and housing. Marcus listened. He didn't preach or promise. He simply said, "You're not alone. The law can serve you if we stand together." From those porch talks grew something bigger, a community restoration project, funded by veterans groups and local donations. Its mission was simple: to educate homeowners, offer legal aid, and ensure that no one lost their home in silence again. They hosted Know Your Rights nights at the town library. They created a hotline for deployed soldiers' families. They trained volunteers to check on elderly neighbors and file complaints properly. And every Sunday, Marcus opened the ranch gates for what locals began calling pecan and promise days, coffee under the trees, children painting what home means to me on old fence boards, and veterans sharing how they fought new battles with kindness instead of anger. In time, the project spread across Texas. Other towns adopted similar programs. Congress even cited the Cedar Creek case while drafting stronger protections for service members. One story had become a movement. One voice had become a chorus. On the first anniversary of the court victory, Marcus stood on his porch as the sun dipped behind the fields. His sister Emma joined him, 2 mugs of coffee in hand. You realize, she said, smiling, you didn't just win back the ranch. You changed what it means to come home. Marcus looked out at the land, glowing gold in the light. Maybe, he said quietly, coming home isn't about where you are. It's about what you stand for. As night fell, fireflies began to spark in the dark, tiny stars dancing close to earth. Marcus sat on the porch swing, the same one from his childhood, and whispered a promise he intended to keep. No one fights alone. Not anymore. The land was quiet, listening. Somewhere in that silence was the echo of every soldier, every family, every voice that had ever believed home was more than wood and soil. It was belonging. It was justice. And it was worth fighting for.